Hi, I'm Ross Benjamin of Sportsbook Review and RBWins.com. Today we're going to touch upon an interesting subject, and that's the NHL Stanley Cup future odds. I like to reflect back to the beginning of the season and look at the future odds of each team, especially the eight that are alive right now, and then take a look at where they currently are in terms of Stanley Cup odds and make some interesting observations and maybe throw a couple trends your way that I see as being important and pertinent ones as they apply going forward. Let's take a look at these odds at the beginning of the season. And you know what jumps out at me out of the eight teams that are still alive in these conference semifinals? The Dallas Stars and the San Jose Sharks at the beginning of the season, or prior to the beginning of the season, I should say, Dallas and San Jose were both 80 to 1 to win the Stanley Cup. And I'm sure any of you who were fortunate enough, lucky enough, or sharp enough to make a wager on either of those two teams are certainly licking your chops right about now. And this is where I would look at hedging if you were, again, if you were lucky enough to say, hypothetically, put $100 down on the San Jose Sharks at 80 to 1. Now, if the Sharks happen to go all the way and win the Stanley Cup and are 1/4 of the way there, you're looking to profit $8,000 for a $100 wager. Now, having said that, my advice would be in this certain situation, specific, I should say, situation, is I would hedge off of San Jose going forward. And I know that sounds like an oxymoron, and I know that sounds like a contradiction, but the bottom line, folks, it's smart money management. For example, Nashville in the series against San Jose, which begins on Friday, which is the day I'm taping this show, they are a plus 115 to win the series. By placing a $500 wager on Nashville at plus 115, if the Sharks get knocked off by the Predators, at least you're going to pick up a profit of 675 on that bet. Take away the 100 you put on San Jose to start the year, and you're still looking at a profit of $575 instead of being disappointed and walking away losing $100. You hate to make a wager at 80 to 1, folks, and not assure yourself of some kind of profit. Even if San Jose wins this series, you're still left with $7,500 to play with. Because if San Jose goes all the way, you're going to make $7,500 at this juncture. However, I would do the same thing in the conference finals. And I would do the same thing if they got all the way to the Stanley Cup finals, never making a wager of more than $500 on your hedge bet. So, hypothetically, if San Jose were to go all the way, you're going to still walk away with a $6,500 profit on a $100 bet. That's not too hard to take. And if they get knocked off, you're going to make yourself a pretty substantial profit by hedging against them. So that's my advice in terms of that goes. And, I look at other future odds before the season began. Tampa Bay at 10 to 1, who I liked, and I put a small wager down on to win the Stanley Cup. Sure, they're still alive. I just don't like their chances. I'm probably going to hedge. I did hedge against them in this series by taking the Islanders, and I will continue to hedge against them because I just don't think the Lightning have what it takes without Steven Stamkos and a couple other key players in this series to make a deep run in the playoffs this season like they did a year ago. Now let's take a look at the current odds. I mean, you're looking at odds-on favorites are Pittsburgh and Washington at plus 375. Very interesting. Very rare, I should say, where you see two teams that are the odds-on favorites, have the lowest odds out of the eight teams remaining in the conference semifinals, squaring off in a conference semifinal series. And that's exactly what's going on right here in the Pittsburgh-Washington series. Now, at the time of this taping, the Washington Capitals did win the opening game of the series against Pittsburgh 4-3 in overtime to take a 1-0 series lead. But boy, oh boy, with all things considered, you can't ignore the Pittsburgh Penguins' recent surge they've made heading into this round. As a matter of fact, the Penguins are 18-4 in the last 22 games, despite that game one loss. And even though Washington was the President's Trophy winner, which is awarded to the team that assimilates the most points during the regular season action, you can't argue with the fact that Pittsburgh right now is the hottest team in all of hockey. As a matter of fact, going back to that loss in game one, keep in note here in game two of this series, the Pittsburgh Penguins have gone a perfect 13-0 in their last 13 games following a loss. So I would really consider a play on Pittsburgh in game two of this series. And then you look at the other teams, the other six teams. You have St. Louis at plus 475. You know, the Blues finally got over that hurdle of defeating the Chicago Blackhawks. And, you know, I like to say they've been a regular season lion in recent years and then a lamb when it comes to the postseason. They've had to play Chicago 4 straight years in a row in the conference quarterfinals or first round of the NHL playoffs. They were defeated 3 straight times, but came away with a thrilling 7-game victory against Chicago. They got over that hurdle, and boy, oh boy, keep an eye on the Blues at plus 475 coming out of the West. They have size, they have speed, they have skill, and right now, Brian Elliott has been red hot in goal. And then Dallas at plus 500, really like Lindy Ruff. I think he's the most underrated coach in all the NHL. Here's a guy that was spent 15 years behind the bench of the Buffalo Sabres, a small market team, and he was able to get that small market team to the conference finals on 3 separate occasions and the Stanley Cup final once. And then he takes over in Dallas last season, and Dallas qualifies for the playoffs for the first time in 6 years. And this year, all Dallas has accomplished as being the number 1 overall seed in the Western Conference, accumulating the most points in all of the Western Conference. So he's done a terrific job. The only thing I don't like about Dallas, and I'm going to steer clear of them for, this is a team that's a high-powered offensive machine. Plenty of offensive firepower in their forwards and even in their defense. But at times they tend to get shoddy on an intermittent basis on the defensive end, and also their goaltending has been a tad bit too inconsistent for my liking. So I'm going to steer away from them. Then you got the San Jose Sharks at plus 625. You know, the oddity with the Sharks is this was the best road team in all of hockey during the NHL regular season. They come out and they win all 3 games at Los Angeles at the Staples Center in the conference quarterfinals. 31-13 on the road this season. You could never discount a team that's that good on the road. On the other hand, a real oddity in itself is the fact that you have a team that's reached the conference semifinal round, and they only have a 21-24 record against the money line at home. So something to keep an eye on there with the San Jose Sharks. And then, of course, we got the Islanders at plus 850 and the Predators at 850 and Tampa Bay, which I already discussed, at 1,200. The Islanders, nice story there. They were able to knock off Florida in the first round in 6 games. First playoff series win in 23 years. John Tavares, one of the most underrated players in all the NHL, got stellar goaltending from season-long backup Thomas Greiss, who's had to assume the number 1 role with Yaroslav Halak going down by injury. And boy, oh boy, as Greiss sees the opportunity, as he was just fabulous in the series against Florida. And the Islanders are off to a 1-0 series lead against Tampa Bay by virtue of their 5-3 win on Wednesday night in game 1 of that series. So that wraps it all up. I hope you found our discussion to be interesting, and I hope you follow some of my advice that I've steered forward as far as Stanley Cup futures. Once again, I'm Ross Benjamin. Thank you so much for joining me. And you can find all my daily betting articles at sbrpicks.com. Have a good day, folks, and I wish you all the best of luck with all your picks this weekend.